Hey, everybody. Did you just stash your phone right at the very last moment?
Yep.
All right. Hey, everybody. I'm Nate Warnock.
I'm Andrea Warnock.
And this is Marriage by Design. It's our Sunday Night Live Q&A. So we do this show, well, every Sunday night. And it's an opportunity to take a look at some questions that have been sent in to us either over the week or over the last couple weeks, as well as to talk about kind of what's going on in our minds right now.
Yeah, what's going on for me is the gnats.
Oh yeah, this is not good.
I don't know what it is, if it's just our neighborhood or if it's like citywide. I don't know. But we have an infestation of gnats.
Yeah, it's gross.
Like all over our house, all on our screens. I walk out the back door and I just walk into like a gnat cloud. It's gross. And all of our neighbors are dealing with it.
Yeah.
It's disgusting.
Yeah. Yeah, I would love to know, as you guys hop on here, put down in the comments, are you sorry,
Gnats.
I have a gnat in my throat.
I think
are you guys dealing with this gnat situation? I'm super aggravated because one of my favorite things to do when we get to the fall is open up the house, like open all the windows, and we've got screens, of course, in the windows. But the problem with the gnats is they're so small, they come right through the screens.
The screens, and our screens don't fit our windows very well, and
then we have to burn our house down.
We have screen issues. Anyway, the gnats are ridiculous.
Yeah.
Have you all noticed Nathan's new hair?
Yeah.
So he got the mohawk.
What do you think?
Yeah, our two older boys, Lincoln's hair is too baby fine to do it yet, but Jackson and Riker both have mohawks, and Nathan took them to get haircuts this weekend, and I guess he decided to get one too.
Well, so I haven't even told you this whole story yet. I told it this morning at the baby dedication, but the full story is that Riker was getting his haircut. So both Jackson and Riker went at the same time. And so I took Jackson, Riker, and Ryan. Ryan wanted to come along because if you go, you get the little dum-dum suckers at the end.
Right.
So she wanted to come with, which is great. And so we took him there. We checked in ahead of time, showed up right at the time we were supposed to, and there's like 10 people sitting in the lobby who are aggravated that this group of 4 people just showed up and like walked into getting their haircut.
Because you signed yourself up beforehand.
That's right. So we sit down and I explain to the two ladies that are cutting Jackson and Riker's hair, okay, here's how we want to do their hair, one all the way around, and then we spike it and we do the mohawk thing on top, half for Riker, the full mohawk for Jackson, but cut it short because we don't want to be in here every 2 minutes. And while Riker's getting his haircut, Riker says, well, Dad, you should get one of these haircuts. And the stylist laughed. And I was like, what's funny about that? And she's like, oh, I just think that's really funny. And I was like,
I'm doing it
all
now.
right, Riker, I will get my hair cut like that. And she goes, are you serious? Like, yes, I'm serious. Give me the Riker. So I got, see, you can see all the way back around.
That's the way Riker does his. Jackson's goes all the way down. Yeah.
Right. So
you should have done that.
So that's what I got. Jackson was trying to convince me to do that. This I can sort of, like, I can still do my sales job with this. The full mohawk, I meet with too many baby boomers to be cool with
calling them out
with the full mohawk.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So what else you got going on, babe? Anything? Stuff?
That's it.
All right. You want to tell the guys how the folks how school's going so far for the kids?
Pretty good. It's been a better year this year than. You're looking at me like I have something to say.
No.
Oh, it's been a better year this year than previous years, so that's great.
Would you say, not that he would ever hear this, but would you say one or other of the two kids it's gone smoother on, if you're comparing kindergarten to kindergarten?
Sure. So, yeah, Ryan is now in kindergarten, and she loves school. She loves doing school. She wants to learn, and it's rare that we have attitude problems, but not too often. that's to be expected when your mom is your teacher,
Of course.
because you take advantage of that.
Right.
But she loves it. Jackson has had an attitude from day one about school, so particularly homeschool. So, but I think Ryan has seen that through the years, the 5 years that we've been homeschooling, and I think she's like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be constantly in a struggle with that. So she takes on the other approach.
Could be.
Which is great.
All right. Well, so here's how this show works. We have kind of a topic that we pick at some point during the week and talk a little bit about that topic. And I don't know why I'm all of a sudden losing my voice, like live.
I feel like you always are clearing your throat.
I know, I don't know what the deal is. But anyway, so we always pick a topic we kind of lead off with. So we'll do that here in a minute. And then generally we do 1 to 2 questions that that we've gathered, over the week. So that's what we're going to do today. So
that's a bummer if you lose your voice because you're the talker, not me.
I know. These episodes will be very short.
Talker.
So what I wanted to talk about today, one of the things that I get to do for our church where we're at, and I'm super grateful that they allow me to do it, is to teach the baby dedication class, which was this morning. We had about 12 babies, which I love babies. Love babies. So I already am having a blast when I show up at 7:30 in the morning and there's 12 babies there hanging out. That's already a great day. So I get to teach, though. You get a chance to encourage the parents and kind of teach them, why does our church do baby dedications versus baby baptisms? And Matt Jackson, who just commented up, said, great job today, Nate. Thank you, Matt. I appreciate that. And I appreciate your encouragement. And, nothing gets me in the mood for teaching baby dedications like Fletch lines first thing in the morning, as in lines from the movie Fletch, which Matt knows is my primary love language. So thank you for that. But it was really good. Got a chance to show up and talk. So I thought I would just share a little bit for our community on what baby dedication is, because I know we have a fairly decent number of Catholic followers to our channel, and it is a difference between our church, which is kind of a non-denominational Christian church, and the Catholic Church. And so I thought I would just share briefly about why we do things the way that we do things. Baby baptism is something that is liturgical in a lot of churches, meaning it's a sacrament in a lot of churches, and it is heavily steeped in tradition. Well, for our church doesn't get as caught up in the tradition of church as much as it does just taking a look at what does the Bible say about each individual topic and allowing that to guide our conversation. When you take a look at 2 Timothy 3:16 through 17, it says, for all scripture is God-breathed and is useful for teaching, rebuking, correcting, and training in righteousness, that the man of God may be fully equipped for every good work. Mm-hmm. And so we look at that and go, okay, well, then we should be looking at the Bible in all areas to make sure that we're fully equipped as parents, as, of course, spouses, as employers, as churchgoers, all of that. So what we don't see in the Bible are examples of baptism.
Baby baptism.
Wow, that almost took a weird turn. Of baby baptism, we certainly do see examples in the Bible of baptism. Jesus himself is an example in the Bible of baptism. He himself was baptized, and we as believers are baptized as well, because we want to follow in his example, and it's a commandment, right, to be baptized, to go and baptize in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. But what we see about baptism is that baptism is, we say, an outward declaration of an inward transformation, meaning once inwardly you have recognized your need for a Savior and submitted your life to Christ, then you're baptized as an outward declaration of that. Well, babies don't have the capacity to have that inward transformation, therefore no need for the baptism piece of it. And to be clear, we believe that, and believe the Bible supports, that baptism is not a requirement for salvation.
Right. Salvation is by grace through faith alone.
That's right, which is a difference between our Catholic, brethren and Lutheran and some of these others, that part of the reason of baby baptism is because there's a piece of baptism that involves eternity.
Mm-hmm.
And, being baptized into the Catholic Church or Lutheran Church or whatever. And we just simply don't believe that.
Mm-hmm.
What we do see examples of in the Bible is baby dedication, specifically in 1 Samuel 1. And we're not going to go all through it today, but I would encourage you to go look at it. It's the story of a man named Elkanah, and specifically his wife Hannah. And Hannah was barren, and she told the Lord, "Lord, if you will give me a son, then I am committing to turning him back to your service for all of his life." And as 1 Samuel plays out, Samuel, who is her son, she does raise him until he's weaned at probably 5 or 6, and could have been older than that. And then she brought him to the church and turned him over to the head priest, who was a man named Eli. And then Samuel ended up being a very significant prophet for the people of Israel, and anointed David as king, and Saul before him, and Solomon after. So certainly played a big role. But the purpose of that was she recognized a really important thing, and this is why ultimately we do baby dedication. She recognized that our children, even the nomenclature that we use, our children, is really not the right way of thinking about them. They're God's children. They're not our children.
Right.
God has given them to us for a season, for a time, our lifetime, to raise, to love, to cherish, to prepare, to equip, all of these jobs that we have as parents. But those are ultimately jobs that we take up out of our love and respect for God, not our love and respect for the child. And that's important, because I don't know about you guys watching this, but there are plenty of times where the way my kids act do not make me want to love, cherish, equip, serve, raise them up. It makes me want to send them to military school.
Mm-hmm.
And
and it takes that responsibility of their reaction away too. So, as parents, we can get caught up in, I'm teaching them what they should know, and I'm trying to prepare them, and I'm trying to equip them and all of that.
Right.
And they're being a knucklehead and choosing not to take on that teaching, that training, whatever. And really seeing them as God's child, and like, I need to be equipped by the Lord and tap into God for that.
Right.
And I'm going to do my best as unto the Lord in raising this child, but their response is their responsibility,
right?
Not mine.
Right.
And so they're God's, and I can give up that feeling of responsibility for the way that they turn out, as long as I am following the Lord's leading and how to raise them.
Yeah. And
I struggle with that piece.
Yeah. I mean, I think we all struggle with that piece, which really brings us back to the dedication piece. Mm-hmm. Because the thing that makes dedication important isn't even us recognizing our stewardship role for the Lord with regards to our kids. It's going in front of the leadership of our local church body that we're a part of, and the community of believers that's represented in that church, and saying before them, we recognize that our son or daughter is the Lord's, and we're committing to raising them in a way that's honoring to him.
Right.
And that's really the purpose of baby dedication. It really isn't even about the baby. That's a big difference between baby dedication and baby baptism. Is with baby baptism, the point is to get that child baptized into the church. With baby dedications, it's really not even about the baby. I mean, the baby, of course, is the one that the parents are committing to raise, but the commitment is to God, and the purpose of it is to make a public declaration so that those around know, okay, I know where these parents stand, with regards to this child, and they're inviting my accountability
Right.
to raise the child in the way that they're saying they're committing to raising him or her.
Right.
So that's baby dedication. It was a blast. Had a great
We
time
got to see
praying
lots of
over these.
babies.
Yeah, so I taught for about 30 minutes, and then with another great team of godly men in our church, we went around and prayed over each of the babies and had a chance to hear what their names mean, and it was great. Heard some amazing stories of, a baby who from very early on in the pregnancy, the mother was told by her doctor, well, the baby's going to die. You need to prepare yourself. The baby's going to die. And just kept saying that over and over again. And man, if that baby wasn't born healthy and has been named in such a manner as to recognize that there was a lot of darkness spoken over this baby, but this is going to be a baby that's going to stand up for righteousness. And man, I just was so touched and and encouraged, and so really great. Highly encourage you, if you're watching this and you have young children or old children and you haven't done a dedication of your kids, man, I would highly recommend it. Go get around your community, even if it's just having friends and family that you want to hold you accountable over to your home and reading the story of Hannah in 1 Samuel 1 together, and then talking as a group about, man, this is how we want to raise our kids. Will you hold us accountable to that before the Lord? That's what it is. That's what we're doing here. Yeah. So that's great. So anyway, thank you. Matt says, great explanation and clarity, Mornox. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. It means a lot coming from you, because sometimes I can be wordy, but not necessarily clear. You don't need to laugh about that. No, that's
you said it.
Okay. Let's close in prayer.
I think you're usually clear.
Now, so let's head over. So if you have questions about that, if you got a chance to hear the baby dedication piece, please feel free to ask any questions that you have. Love to talk about that more. If you have questions about dedication versus baptism, baby wise, please feel free. If you heard me say earlier that the Bible does not talk about baptism, and you want to tell me I'm wrong, I'll save you the trouble. That was incorrect. I meant baby baptism. So that's that. So let's answer a couple questions, babe.
Okay, let's.
So I went first last time, and we didn't even get to your question. See the long-winded conversation we had earlier. But so I want to start today with a question to you.
Can you have two more opposite people that are married? Jackson tells me frequently, Mom, you just don't talk very much. And I know, I talk when I have something to say.
Jackson doesn't say that to me.
Yeah. But something that's Jackson does talk a lot, so it is kind of fun because I don't talk a lot, and I feel like he's like, oh well, if you're not going to talk, I'm going to. So I hear a lot
child.
from all of our kids are talkers, but
yes, they are.
I hear a lot from him, and so specifically when he and I are in the car together, and I'm just not much of a talker, so I, talk when there's something to say, but he talks, and I hear a lot about what's going on because he feels like, oh, there's space to talk, so I'm just going to talk. And anyway, but he'll tell me frequently, like, Mom, you just don't talk very much. Like, I mean, I talk, but I'm not as much of a talker as he is. And it's funny.
All right, so here's the question that I have for you, speaking of our kids. So the question has been asked. Mm-hmm. How do you encourage your kids to invest in each other, right? Meaning, how do you get them to play together and not fight? How do you encourage them to play together in ways that aren't like, hey, go in this room and play together and don't come out until you're best friends? Like, how do you foster relationship amongst your kids in your daily life?
First, just having the mentality that it's so important that your kids are having good relationships with each other, and that it's important to foster that and to develop that and for them to not dislike each other a lot, just to have the mentality that siblings don't have to fight. They don't have to be enemies. They can be friends. I think it's important as a parent. So I hear a lot of parents say like, yeah, my kids don't really get along. That's, it's siblings. And I think it's so sad because I think that doesn't have to be that way. And it shouldn't be that way. So first it starts with the parents. And then, I think we tell our kids a lot that their best friends are in this house. Their best friends are each other and that they'll always have each other even when we're gone. So that's what lasts is their relationship, and they need to sow into that. We've talked about this ad nauseum on this channel, but we don't do very much technology. So that itself lends itself to our kids needing to play a lot and wanting to play a lot. And who else are they going to play with except each other?
That's good, babe.
So they're not off in their rooms doing their own things. They're with each other. And the other part about their rooms is, so we have a playroom that's in a main area in our house. And our kids are allowed one toy in their like
type of toy.
Our daughter has a dollhouse with her Barbie dolls, and our younger, Riker has a ball pit, and Jackson doesn't have anything anymore, but he has stuff in his room that he likes to jack around with. But they're allowed like one type of toy in their room.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, and so that it's not like all of your toys are in your room and you play alone with your toys. We have just fostered an environment where if you want to play, you're going to have to be around everybody else.
Yeah.
So that's part of it. When they fight, and they do, our kids are around each other all the time. They fight. One thing that we say frequently to them is, because of course kids are tattletales, when they come and say, Riker did this to me or whatever, it's like, well, what did you tell Riker about that? So if Ryan comes to us and says, Riker stole this toy from me, blah, 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 we'll tell her, did you tell him that you were playing with that? You need to work that out with Riker.
Yeah.
And so having them work out their issues with themselves helps a lot too, I think, because it's not always a parents versus somebody else situation.
Right.
It's teaching them relationships can be hard sometimes, and we need to work through this.
Right.
I don't know. What are some other things? Sometimes if they're not getting along, of course, the best thing is to just say like, maybe a little bit of time away from each other is okay. Or maybe they just need to do a chore together.
Yeah. So sometimes your language is important too. I mean, you're really big on whenever anybody says like, oh, my best friend is, like, you're always intentional to say, no, if it's Jackson, no, Jackson, your best friends are Ryan and Riker and Lincoln.
Mm-hmm.
And that might sound like semantics, and it is, but semantics matters.
Yeah.
I mean, when he's thinking about something as exclusive as a best friend, those words matter. Mom says I should think of my siblings as my best friends.
Yeah.
And for a while, it might just be that, right? Like, okay.
Mom says, yeah.
But as he gets older, he'll realize the importance of that. And part of the danger is if we're not really intentional on helping our kids when they're young build these relationships, by the time they realize the value of them, sometimes that ship's sailed tragically.
Yeah, and don't hear us say, gosh, we have it all figured out and we're doing the greatest thing. But
our kids are young. Maybe they'll grow up and it'll fall apart.
These are things that we've learned from other people along the way and learned from raising kids along the way too. But the other thing too is that we invest in our adult sibling relationships.
Right.
So our kids see that we have good sibling relationships with our siblings.
Yeah.
And that those are important to us, and we love our siblings and we want to spend time with them. We want to have a relationship with them. So I don't know if that makes a difference to them now, but I hope that in the future they recognize that, and that's just like, oh, that's what's normal
Right.
for them.
Right. That's great. We had a question here, a
Hey,
comment
Jerem.
here. Jerem, look at that! Look at that wedding picture right there.
Yeah,
That's great. So Jerem is a friend of ours who was a really good friend of my younger brother's when we lived in New Zealand, and
and he's become a friend of ours, and
Yes.
he's visited the States a couple times. He lives in
That's
New
right.
Zealand.
Lives in New Zealand as a pastor.
Yeah.
In New Zealand. So
Yeah.
man, I hope all's well
We're good
with
to
you.
see you on here. We're glad to see you
Brother.
on here.
I have heard some discouraging stories about what life is like in New Zealand right now with the government control and whatnot with regards to COVID. So I hope you're managing to keep your flock of the folks in your church clinging close to the Lord, and I trust that you are, and we'll be praying for you. So, man, thanks for checking in. I really appreciate that. Okay, one last question, babe, and I'm going to ask it to you.
Again.
So, the question has come up because for some reason we're the couple to ask about having kids. I don't know. But the question is, with all that's going on in the world today, with COVID and socialism and what seems to be a dangerously teetering United States and terrorism and blah 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 blah, all of the things, is it a responsible time to be bringing kids into the world?
I mean, we're bringing another one in.
Oh, look, do it, babe. Show them the belly. Ooh, yeah, that'd be 5 for us. That'll be 5.
I keep trying to hide it, and it's gotten really hard to hide. I'm like 20, I don't know, some weeks, 20.
So
you lose track.
So February then?
23 weeks. I don't know, but we're having a baby in February.
That was really not a setup for you to announce.
No, Nathan's been trying to set this up for weeks.
Because I've been, I can't even tell you how many times I've almost screwed that up on a live event.
And I'm like, I'm not ready to say anything. Anyway, I keep trying. Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much.
I keep trying to hide it, and I've like gotten good with, but it's really hard. Just looks like I'm drinking too much beer lately. But anyway,
so the answer to that, obviously for us, is yes. This is not a time to shy away from having children. But what's your thoughts on that, baby?
I don't know. Just.
Yeah, but what would you tell to someone that says, like, with all this stuff going on, is that really a responsible thing you and Nathan are doing?
Sure. Does God ever not need his people here on the earth? Are we, as the scripture ever talk about when things get really hard, well, then we need to stop procreating because I don't got you then. I don't know that he ever. Yeah, it doesn't. The scripture says, I will never leave you or forsake you. And we know that times are going to get hard, but that doesn't change what we're called to do. We're called to believe in the Lord Jesus Christ, be saved, make disciples, and we're called to procreate. And those are our little disciples too. But that doesn't change with the changing tides of craziness.
Right.
And there's always been craziness here and there and everywhere in the world.
Right.
It seems crazier now, sure, but I don't know I don't know what the future holds. Are we at the end times? Maybe. Are we far from it? Could be. So are we going to, as believers, say, oh, this is too scary, God doesn't have us anymore?
Right.
That's not a thing.
Right. And this partly ties into the conversation you and I are going to be having about contraception in our either Family Friday or Marriage Monday, whichever one we do that in, because we act like this is the most dangerous the world has ever been. And in reality, I mean, it is, don't get me wrong. This is a dangerous time.
Yeah, it's craziness.
But I mean, we need to be honest. Go back and read about the history of the Roman Empire, the Assyrian Empire, the Babylonian Empire, the medieval times. I mean, read about what the medieval times were like.
Yeah, we live in such a an easier time, and we've lived, even though there's been war, of course, we've lived in a lot of peace. And
Right.
I think that the feeling of this is crazy, this is spiraled out of control,
Right,
is just from our perspective, maybe.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I would submit that this isn't even the most dangerous time the United States has ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the United States was born out of a group of essentially philosophist farmers who were going up against what was at the time the greatest empire in the world in England,
Mm-hmm.
who had thousands of soldiers that lived in the same towns as these people lived in. And so, we need to be really careful about that. And the other side of that, and is my point, is even asking the question, is it responsible to be bringing children into the world? We have to recognize, unless what you're saying is, should we stop having sex ever? Which I'm sure is not what these people were asking. We need to recognize that's a new question in and of itself. Right? I mean, at almost every other point in human history, if you asked a question like that, the response would have been, look, buddy, sex is like the only fun part of my day. Don't take that away from me. Right? I mean, when you're like, in indentured servitude, or there's all this dangerous stuff around you, right? I mean, people would have said, well, because those things would have been equated, right? I mean, the way to stop having children is to stop having sex, and I'm not going to stop having sex. Like, we have to recognize that the ability to say when we are and aren't having kids with whatever it is, 99.9% certainty, is a new thing. And so we probably should take a step back and ask, is that even something that we should be thinking about? But setting that aside for a moment, and then Jerem has thrown a hand grenade onto the comment section, so I'm going to address that here in a second. But what I want to read something from the Bible. Again, I want to bring it back to the Bible. This is from the book of Esther. I would strongly encourage you, if you're having a difficult time relying on the Lord in what is a difficult situation around us, I'd encourage you to go back and read the book of Esther.
Read Daniel too.
Yes, start with Esther. Daniel might give you a headache. But this is so Mordecai, who is Esther's uncle, he comes to her and he's asking her to intervene. She'd been raised, sort of through a supernatural series of events that the Lord brought about. She was raised to queen of the Persians, and so Mordecai comes to her and asks her to go to the king and intervene on behalf of the Jews who were being attacked. And Esther's afraid to do so because the king can have her killed for approaching him without being summoned. And Mordecai says this to Esther, and I want you to think about this with regards to the question of, is it responsible to have children right now or not? Mordecai said in verse 13, it's Esther chapter 4, verse 13. Mordecai sent this reply to Esther: don't think for a moment that because you're in the palace, you will escape when all other Jews are killed. If you keep quiet at a time like this, deliverance and relief for the Jews will arise from some other place, but you and your relatives will die. Who knows if perhaps you were made queen for just such a time as this? And when we read the rest of this chapter, or the rest of this book of Esther, it becomes clear that is
right.
Why she was made queen, was for just such a time as this.
Yeah, and I love what he says too. If you keep quiet, deliverance and relief will come from some other place. The Lord's plan is going to happen.
Right.
If he's called you to do it, do it. Otherwise, if you miss out, then his plan's still going to take place.
Right.
You're just going to miss out on being the one he uses.
That's right.
So maybe one of our children is, our children have a purpose and a plan.
Yeah.
All of them
from the Lord.
Right.
Yeah.
From the Lord. And so if we don't have them, then God will use someone else, and that's our missed blessing.
Right. So I would say, trust the Lord for that, right? If you and your wife or husband, carry on in your, life living as husband and wife and pursue each other sexually and make sure that that part of your marriage is on point, because whether you're having kids or not having kids, that part of your marriage needs to be on point. And God honoring. And if it is, and the Lord chooses to bless you with children, then we need to trust him that that child was made for just such a time as this. Right. And the Lord will, through you, and through the power of his Spirit, will help you prepare that child for this world.
Right.
Okay, now I'm going to set this question up, but Jerem, if you're still on, buddy, I want to invite you back to next week, because this is a question that is going to take a considerable amount of discussion, and I don't want to rush into it with us already being 10 minutes over time. So I want to read it, and then we'll talk about it a little bit, and we will jump into this when we get together next week. But here's what the question says. He says, "Thanks, guys. Question that's floating around in my circles here is homeschool versus Christian school versus public school.
Yeah.
How much do we rely on ourselves as parents being the primary disciple makers of our children?" Mm-hmm. And that second question he asked there is exactly the question that we need to be asking as Christian moms and dads, mm-hmm. right? Who is taking the primary responsibility for, really, he says disciple maker of our children, but really I would say just in common parlance, who's raising our kids? Right? Who's taking primary responsibility for raising our kids, and how do we think about homeschool versus Christian school versus public school? And
that's a big question.
It is.
And it's a hard one. So the short answer is that Nathan was really convicted way before we even had kids, that we would not do public school.
Right. For reasons that, again, I'm happy to explain the reasoning, but it's going to have to wait till next week, because it'll be a long discussion.
And I didn't get to that point for a long time. Even into our homeschooling journey, I wasn't at that point for a while. But we chose to homeschool. It's actually a collaborative education, so it's a school where it's a very strict Christian school. You go to school 2 days a week, and then you homeschool the rest of the time, but it's not seen as an accredited school. It's seen as a homeschool.
Right.
So we homeschool, and we just felt like there's so many hours in a week where our child would be influenced if we sent them to public school by people who have an agenda, at least some of them, by people who we don't even know what they believe or what's being said all the time or what they're being taught. And especially with young, impressionable children, that wasn't okay with us.
Right.
So
that's right. And again, I'm happy, because I know we have even teachers and administrators involved in the public school system that watch our channel. And I'm not, certainly we're not trying to say everybody, is in on that, but, we'll talk next week, because I do want to share a little bit about some of my concerns that I have with public schooling that played into our decision to do homeschooling for our kids. And a lot of it really has nothing to do with the personnel. It has to do with the stated intention of public schools, mm-hmm. going back to the beginning of the modern public schools. And Jerem, having been involved in, not a public school, but having been involved in the school system in Auckland, New Zealand, during the time that we lived there as well, I would say this probably applies to the schools down there in New Zealand, at least the same, if not more, because, in New Zealand, you guys are just further down the socialism as a government form path than the United States currently is. And, well, I love you, brother. I hope you're further down that road than the United States ever gets, mm-hmm. Because it's bad news. And so I want to address that question. So, Jerem, I hope you had a chance to see this. Please come back a week from today. So we do this every Sunday evening at 8:30 Central Time. You're going to have to do the math on that, buddy, because I don't know what that is.
Yeah, are you up in the middle of the night?
I think it's 17 hours ahead. So what would
No, I know
that
it's
be?
ahead. I
So
don't
that
know.
would be like 8:30. That's 12. So 9:30, 10:30, 11:30, 12:30. So it's like 1:30.
Oh.
1:30? 1:30 maybe
You at
your
work?
time in the
You at
afternoon.
work.
So yeah. So anyway,
Well,
I
happy
believe
Monday,
I believe it
Jerem.
would be 1:30 on next Monday for you, buddy. So yeah. So anyway, please come back.
Thanks for asking.
And we'll talk about that
on.
because there's good conversation to be had there too about the Christian school side of it. Jerem, I would also love you to go pop over to our YouTube page. So just go to YouTube and search Marriage by Design. And Andrea actually, it's been some time ago, probably maybe not quite a year ago, that Andrea did a whole conversation, a live event on homeschooling.
Yeah, about a year ago.
Yeah, so you might just search that on our YouTube page and take a look at that. But man, this is totally the heart behind this channel to be able to have, hopefully give you and the group of folks that are floating around your circles something to think about with regards to homeschool versus Christian school versus public school. So, man, please, Jerem, ask those folks in that circle if they have specific questions, because we went to a private Christian school, Andrea and I did, for grade school and junior high. Then Andrea did public school for high school because she's a godless animal. And I did private Catholic school for high school. And now we're homeschooling. That's not true. Our problems usually required way more money.
Yeah.
So and then we've we've done homeschool now. So we kind of have experienced all of that and have stayed pretty in touch with each of those around here. So we'd be happy to answer any questions that anyone in your circle has regarding any of that. So anyone else watching too, please come back. Love to see you next week at 8:30 to talk a little bit about schooling. So we will be doing that. Guys, for now, we're going to get out of here. We are already 15 minutes over time, but some good discussion. Thanks so much to everybody that commented. Love having people comment and be involved. Really appreciate that. So yeah, until next time, guys, thank you so much for being a part of this show. We love having you be a part of the community. Got 2 shows coming out this week. One will come out tomorrow morning as we continue our conversation on divorce and take a look at specifically what the Bible says about adultery. And then we will be talking on Friday about the armor of God, and it's the sword, right?
Sword of the Spirit.
Yeah, the sword. So that's what we got coming out for you this week. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate you being here. Love all you guys. And remember, God is for your marriage. Have a great week.